Okay, welcome to the Pedagoflash IMT-BS. So here is Julien Morice, and today it's an interesting experience for me because it's my first podcast in English natively, I would say. So today I'm with a teacher whose name is Anuragini. So hello Anuragini.
Hello Julien.
And today we want to talk about using podcast in pedagogy, because we try something, I think, very interesting with you. First, I would like you to introduce yourself, if you can. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you, Julien, for having me in the podcast. I'm Anuragini Shirish for the listeners, and I'm a professor at Institute Mean Telecom Business School, and I specifically focus on information systems for teaching, but I'm also an avid researcher. I work on digital transformation as a global umbrella term, but in that I look at digital work-related aspects, and I research on digital society, and also look at how digital innovation changes our life.
Perfect. Thank you very much. So I wanted to invite you because I really want you to present what we do with our podcast experience, I would say. So can you explain a bit what we do exactly with your publication? What was about the podcast?
I mean, one of the challenges that researchers normally face is that how can they bring their research into teaching? So I had to come up with a new course where I was teaching a population that I was not very familiar with, and they were bachelor students, which means they are very, very young. They are 19 years old. And how can I then effectively translate my very complex, highly theoretical research perspectives with them in the course? So this course is on ICT and knowledge. We had one session where we wanted the students to build digital intelligence using very emerging issues in research. So, I thought that I have written many papers on different aspects that cover digital work, that cover digital society aspects, as well as some issues on digital innovation. So I have papers on AI, I had papers on deep fakes, and papers on fake news and how we can tackle it. So all of these are very, very interesting perspectives for students to develop their digital intelligence. So I started to think, what can we do? How can I actually effectively communicate on my research to the students in 3 hours? So obviously, research articles, which are very, very difficult to read, complex. First of all, it's in English. And the population of students that I was targeting were primarily French, but also with a little level of English. So I wasn't sure if they can actually read 40 pages of, a theoretical article and understand. So then I started thinking what could be the best way. And I realized that, with certain tools, we can actually convert the entire research paper into a podcast format. Once I learned that I can create podcasts from a content, we experimented with the research paper, and as you know.
Yeah, of course. And we use NotebookLM to do that. And it's a very impressive tool because right now you can as well prompt if you want to focus in specific definition, for example. And yeah, it's very interesting tools to use. And with you, we use a lot this tool because we create an entire podcast. That name is AI Generated Insight based on research work of Professor Anuragini Shirish. And it's possible to find this podcast in Spotify, but in a lot of different tools as well. So if you want my public, here's this podcast, we will put the link in the description. So today there is 17 episodes of this podcast, and for each episode there is a publication for each one. And what is very interesting, it's that it's allowed, like you say, students to hear publication. And I was in my car recently, and I was like, okay, I want to see if I will hear it like a normal podcast, I would say. And I was really surprised because I hear totally the podcast about happiness management in digital workplace. And it was really impressive because I forget that it was AI generated at the end, because the two people are talking very naturally, so it's very impressive. But I wonder if your student, because you evaluate it, I wonder what they think about that, and was it useful for them?
I think the students really liked it a lot. First of all, we're dealing with the generation which has grown up with technology. So if you offer a pedagogical dispositive which is coming or which leverages digital technology, they're happy with it. Secondly, they were extremely happy with the podcast specifically because we had also other tools integrated in our program, but especially podcast, they said that they never thought that they could understand such complex topics in very simple language.
Wow. Okay.
And they were highly impressed, and they said that really made their learning effective.
Okay, so it's not like you are a sailor or you say everything was all right, very good, etc. Because it's a real concrete result, because you evaluate it with a summary questionnaire.
Yeah, so we asked the students some feedback at the end of the class, and especially open-ended feedback, so we can get rich data in terms of what exactly they felt about it and which part of the program and the use of the tool they liked. And what, like you said, one of the students said, they love the fact that the podcast is conversation between two people. It was not one person talking about the paper, so it's two people discussing. And one student clearly said that I like the dialogue between the two people. And they also said that they didn't know it was AI generated.
Okay, that's very impressive. And how many publications did they hear? Only one or more?
So the course itself, we decided to put 6 publications and they could choose 5 out of it. But each group, divided into 3 or 4 students, had one paper.
One paper, okay.
So they had to only listen to one paper and understand that paper very well.
Because I wonder if they hear, maybe 10 podcasts in that way, maybe it's a bit repetitive. I don't know. Maybe we have to try it, to test it, but maybe it should be a bit repetitive at the end, but it's very impressive in other way. So yeah. And you include it in with knowledge tool. We create a module for revision, and you include it into this module. And did they finish the entire module? Yeah.
Yeah. So what's interesting is that I don't think you can use podcast only as a standalone tool in teaching. Yeah. This can be one of the supplementary material that you can use. And in my case, they had the whole paper in PDF format. They had a podcast that would summarize the paper in a very user-friendly manner. Then they also had the knowledge tool, which created the course curriculum, which had a lot of glossary. It had a summary. It had things that they can use for revising, like flashcards, fill in the blanks, and quizzes. So I would say the entire learning experience has really, transformed their capacity to absorb very complex ideas. And this has helped them to become more digitally intelligent in my case, because the course was targeting for these students to understand digital phenomena. So, and the fact that this course was integrated with our final presentation, which means they were reading this piece of research, they were using this podcast and all the other knowledge tool to understand the key concepts. But I also tested them, because in the next session they had to present the paper to a group of their other peers. Orally.
Okay.
And they also had to link it to other sustainable development goals. They had to come up with their own concrete case fictionally to link the paper back. So you see, the learning is much more sticky in the sense they don't stop at just understanding the paper. And not by revising the concept that they will know the theoretical notions. They also have to do flipped classroom, which means they have to teach the same research paper back to the other students.
Excellent.
And the peers also ask them questions. And it's everything together becomes the course.
Very interesting. So flipped classroom, Okay, so interesting. And because we create AI content as well with knowledge with another tool, like you say. And what is interesting with knowledge is that we can download it in H5P in Moodle. It's a bit technical, but it allowed teacher to modify the result. And you add the podcast, and it's something more impact for learners. So very interesting. So thank you very much for this experimentation. But would you like to do it again, or is it a one shot for you? I don't know.
I think I definitely will do it again because my research keeps evolving and I want to keep my students up to date, and I might teach different audience the next time. So it's very interesting to know how people react to your own research at different levels. Bachelors, they will think differently. Maybe the same research paper, if is read by a master level student, they will have different levels of discussion. So it's always exciting for me to introduce my research in different forms. So I think I'll continue to do it.
And do you share your podcast with other people? Because in Spotify, so you can share the link.
Yeah. Absolutely. So first part, we were talking about how podcast is used in teaching. But as researchers, we have another issue. How do we communicate our research to general audience, right? So this podcast has been effective. So what I do is, as soon as I have a publication, I convert that to a podcast. Then I publish it widely in my social network. I share it with people. And especially when you're interacting with companies, it's very easy for me to give them my work. I can say, this is the work I'm doing, listen to my podcast. So instead of them to listen and read my entire research, which they cannot capture all the nuanced findings.
And if I talk about me, I prefer to learn by hearing. I read a lot of book like that, hearing when I drive to work in my car. So it's something I like, and I think a lot of people are like me. So it's a good idea, I think, to share it even for researcher, even for colleague, etc.
That's true. So the idea came about because when we published a white paper on a very impactful topic on digital transformation in Ireland, and I wanted to share this whole essence of the white paper to the government officials. That's when, we discussed how we could share it, and if we can create a podcast, because government officials don't have time, and even if you did research, they don't care. They're not going to read a 40-page article. So for me, it was absolutely necessary that, when we release the white paper, there's a podcast associated to it. And so we can easily communicate our results to make a societal impact. Because we do research not only for knowledge generation, but also create impact. And impact can only occur when you communicate the knowledge.
Exactly. And a last word, I want you to know that it's possible as well to prompt in NotebookLM to make it create a French podcast. So that means that you can even create this podcast in French for French people in your publication in English. No problem with that. So it's interesting to know.
Exactly. That's very, very, exciting news that you're sharing, because a lot of people, have hesitancy in their non-native language.
Exactly.
But we may be in a country where, we need to share the results, in the language of that country. In my case, for example, I publish in English, but if I have to communicate with my French counterparts and stakeholders, it's absolutely essential for me. If I have a tool like this that can help me to translate my research in French, I think it's just great.
And there is, it's something that appeared, I think 2 days ago, interactive mode in NotebookLM. That means that you can interact with the podcast, asking question, and the answer is on real time. I never try it, but it will be very interesting to test it as well. So yeah, thank you. Thank you again for coming to see me. So maybe you have last thing to add, or it's okay for you?
I think the last thing to add is I would encourage other researchers to also try out this kind of new techniques, both for the teaching and for the research. And I think I'm also leading a research team called SmartBiz within the school. So I'm encouraging my team to kind of share their research in a podcast form so that, others can listen to it as well.
Perfect. Thank you, Anuragini, and see you soon, I hope. and see you, dear spectator of my podcast, IMT-BS, Pedagoflash IMT-BS. Thank you very much, and see you soon.
Thank you.